What a great show.
That is, your voice is sounding great today.
Oh, thank you.
I think you took the advice of a good microphone,
Right?
unlike me.
So far.
I'm resisting it because I don't want to be too perfect too soon. I mean, too perfect. Sorry, I'm not perfect at all. I mean, like, I just want to I don't want to just like buy my way through to like everything. But you know what I mean?
Yeah, I
Do you
do.
know what I mean?
Nice to meet you, Bob.
Nice to meet you. What an enjoyable 40 some odd minutes that was. It flew by. The beginning, just getting to hear, it was like being a fly on the wall with everybody sort of catching up and everything. So just another fascinating show. So well done.
Oh, you're getting a lot of the you got Chip coming.
Steve, how are you?
Steve's here.
Hello. Great show.
Steve's been a guest on FIR.
So the way the Zoom after show works now, because of Steve Garfield, is we record the show and then the show goes up on my channel without any editing whatsoever.
Wow.
And people get an opportunity to, see this intimate conversation and just be a part of it.
And Neville and I, when the lockdown started, we initiated FIR Zoom chat every Thursday at 1 o'clock Eastern time. Any FIR listeners who want to drop by, we just chat for an hour. Chip's been there. And yeah, we post that, both the audio and the video. So same thing.
That's cool. Steve's here. I can tell because of the birds singing in the background.
Oh, shoot. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. No, it actually was a
Sounds
nice
nice.
addition. Yeah.
At least you're not chirping, Steve.
So here's a question, a technical question, by the way. I'm watching you guys on gallery view because it's the best way, right, to see everyone's faces. But when Zoom records, it only records in speaker view.
You can change it. It's an option.
Yep.
If you go to the website,
Go to
Yeah.
Zoom.
you can look at the recording options there. You can choose.
Oh, I see. Okay, well, that's good to know. Steve helps me again.
Today I learned.
So yeah, exactly. So Neville, you made a really good point right at the end, which is we look at this. We look at the CEO of CrossFit coming up with Floyd 19, and we see what I mean. Like, it's just unbelievable. Maybe I'll rephrase. I'll ask a different, more provocative question. Has Twitter ever done anything good for corporations?
I
mean,
would say, sure. I would say it certainly has. It provided people with the means to connect with other people in ways that are unfiltered, largely in the early days. So that's a very broad brush statement, I must admit. There's a lot of bad things, but you asked the question. That is one good thing.
How about now?
There are organizations that know how to use it. I mean, I hate to drag out the ones that are always referenced, but look at how Wendy's approaches Twitter with huge numbers of followers just because they want to see what snark is going to be unleashed next, and it's had an impact on their customer base. So yeah, there are people who figured it out.
And then I'm sure you guys have covered steak ums. Have you
We
covered
talked
that?
about it. I'd have to refresh my memory, but I know we talked about it when it was an issue.
So for those of you that didn't follow it, I only followed this very briefly, but I guess it was just someone, maybe junior, who had the reins of the Twitter account. And steak ums, what is it? It's like a processed, frozen, or like really poor / cheap steak alternative.
I can see Steve's like on top of it right now, Googling it.
It's
Yeah, you can see
cardboard.
beef like cardboard, and suddenly they just offered this like snarky social commentary on everything going on, and it just just connected with people because you just saw this box with this faux steak offering this poignant, profound commentary, and and just people like, I don't know, just connected. Go figure. So anyway, that was Steakums.
So how authentic were their posts? Because I've heard the story about Steakums a bunch of times, and I've just never taken the time to like dive in and binge read tweets from Steakums. Are they? I mean, they must have some humor in it,
Well, let me
as snarkiness, or
let me do the magic
sure.
share screen.
Because humor is really dangerous. It's really hard to do it without getting in trouble. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but what they did this, Bob, with, in my opinion, they were on brand because they're kind of like the spam of the steak world.
Right.
So they don't take themselves too seriously. So the bottom line is that because they can come out and be snarky, it worked for them. It's just, I think the Neville's a real point. If it's not authentic, it doesn't work specifically.
Yeah.
And I think even more so now.
Let me do this, which is now just see if I can, with my little pointer.
We can see your cursor.
No, but the pointer is much the little,
Yes.
Dear brands, what is preventing you from looking like this? Let's see what else we can find. Can we?
So what they're doing, can't any brand do that? What's keeping any brand from really identifying itself enough the way it looks like Steakums has?
So
and then
just a question,
is a good one.
to ask a question actually, because I don't remember. Shel, you mentioned we talked about this on FA. I don't remember it actually. What is it these guys did exactly?
They just found a way to use their Twitter feed to attract an audience of people who probably never would have followed Steakum, frozen sliced steaks before.
Well, yeah, I mean, look at this one. If people can't agree on the same material reality of facts and information, then having a reasonable discussion is incredibly difficult. If someone believes in something unfalsifiable, changing their mind is incredibly difficult. Pick your battles and know when to log off. Now, that is a statement, a profound statement that you'd expect a Neville, Hobson, or Shel Holtz to make. But when it's made by, or even a Joey Dumont, and definitely Bob Farnham, but not a Jan Slotnick, who I think is mad at me because we haven't seen him in a few days. But the fact that it's made by Steakum on a Twitter account just makes it, I don't know, hysterical and profound at the same time. Hysterically profound. Anyway, Derek Richardson, meanwhile, was waiting to come in.
Hey, Neville, it's FIR 158. The headline was even, come for the millennial angst, stay for the frozen steak.
Okay, that's funny.
Yep.
When was
Good memory,
that?
Neville there. Good memory.
I think, Neville, that may have been before you returned to the show because I had Mark Dollins and Doug Haslam on that week.
would have been the time. Yep.
Well, that's a blast from the past as well, Doug Haslam.
Yeah.
And then there was Donna Papacosta. How about that one?
Wow.
Yeah, Donna. I'm still in touch with Donna.
Yep. She's retired now, I think.
Yeah, she just retired, right?
Yep.
Who was the guy? Oh man, it just escapes my mind right now. He got on a Greyhound bus. I just can't remember his name, but I can see.
Oh,
him.
you're talking about Brian Person.
I was going to say Brian, and I was just like, I
haven't talked to Brian in years.
We met him in 2006, Joe, if you remember, in a bar in New York City somewhere.
Yeah, I remember the bar as well.
Got a bus from Boston to come and meet us all.
And I had dinner with him several times because he ended up working for
Lithium.
Lithium, that's right, which is in San Francisco. So
he was living in the UK for a while, and I met up with him a couple of times when he was over here. But he went back to either Houston, at the end of last year. Yeah,
Austin, I think.
Shel, I'm mindful that it's 2:59, so say something deeply Steakum's poignant and profound, and then disappear.
Oh, what could I say that's Steakum's level profound? I would say
just don't be cheating.
For everything that we talk about with social media, especially all of the negatives out there, pretty much, with the exception of Neville, I think everybody I know here, Steve, Chip, Joe, I met through social media. And that continues to this day. I make great connections with people I never would have had the opportunity to meet So
Yep, same here.
there is still tremendous value here. And Neville and I have also made the observation, and I find this just ridiculously amusing, that when we were all talking about social media back in the crayon days, one of the great faux pas was to accept money to talk about a brand on a blog post. And now there's an entire industry of influencing that is based on accepting money from brands to talk about them in a post. That's a 180-degree change that I would never have seen coming.
And in some cases, we got a free Nikon D80 camera and then got destroyed by Strumpet because
Strumpet, gee whiz,
Strumpet,
yeah.
God, I remember Strumpet.
Yep. Brian Connolly, right?
Right.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, yeah.
Oh, I actually had dinner with him once in Chicago. I do have to go. I apologize. Yeah. This work call was originally scheduled for an hour from now, but this morning it got moved up to now.
See you in the FIR Zoom chat tomorrow, Shel.
That's
hey
right.
guys, come along and join us tomorrow if you have spare time.
Thursday, not tomorrow. Thursday.
Oh, sorry, Thursday. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Good to see everyone.
Good to see you, Shel.
Hey, Shel.
Bye, Shel. So now it's the Chip and Neville show because Chip, you're on the network, right?
I am. I have 2 shows on the network.
Yeah, you do.
It's good to see. It's good to see your smiling face. To me, you look the same.
Well, that's the advantage of being bald. You don't notice the changes quite as much.
Yeah. True.
And it's the perfect quarantine haircut. So.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, haircuts, that's the thing. I mean, when on Zoom calls, you notice how people are lacking in their personal grooming because of the lockdowns. And the fatal mistake you make, because I made it, is when you comment on one of the women on the call. Don't do that.
Well, now, why would you do that, Neville?
Yeah, why would you do that? Exactly.
Right.
And I did, you know. Oh, boy, not good.
Congratulations on being pregnant. Oh, you're not. Oh.
Yeah, when do you do?
Just remember, this is being recorded.
Oh,
dear, I did.
I'm expecting in about 3 months, by the way. But I'm trying really, really hard right now, as you guys know, I've eliminated Corona cocktails, changing the subject, trying to eliminate, I've had alcohol like every day, which in quarantine, which I've never done. Socially, of course, I drink, but I was never the glass of wine or a scotch at night. And the only way that I've been able to wind down has been just like just a glass. I mean, nothing crazy but just filled with calories. So now my weekdays are miserable. You're thinking about something.
But you're sober.
That's why.
Well, I wasn't like falling over myself.
You need to try some herbs. That's a much better way.
Yeah.
Well, tomorrow's guest, his whole platform is about, if you're talking about oregano, he talks about oregano, and that's the herb you're talking about, right?
It's legal in Vermont.
It's easy for you to say, Joey DeMont, in California.
California. I live here for a reason. Living in San Francisco libtard country, which I get accused of most of my days. It's worth my time and my effort to live in this wonderful city.
So Neville, was it Wokinghamshire, or did I get a complete?
No, I was going to comment on that, Joe. No, you did a mishmash of different names. It was Wokingham. Wokingham. But I moved from there about 5 years ago, to the next door borough, because the taxes are cheaper here, and I got a bigger house, so it was a good deal.
So what borough is that now?
Bracknell.
Bracknell. It doesn't roll off the tongue like
No,
Wokinghamshire.
Wokingham.
Wokingham.
Yeah, Wokingham was a nice sound.
The sheriff of Wokingham.
Well, if you read Oscar Wilde, you'll know about Lady Bracknell, who was a big character in one of his writings, and that was from here. So, yeah.
So now I'm looking at the list. Where was the original list of things that you guys came up with? You had wait, let me do another poor share.
I've got Shel's list here, and I got mine.
There's the list.
You got the whole thing. Perfect.
So we had, what do we have?
Just like FIR, it never ends.
Yeah.
Well,
we were talking about that earlier too, Chip. Planning this was, hey, this is like a regular FIR where we never keep to an hour or an hour and a half or 2 hours. We did a 2-hour show not long ago. Gee whiz, yeah.
I mean, I think we touched on a bunch of them, but I was like, what did you guys? Well, there might have been Shel's thing talking about TikTok.
Yeah, that was Shel's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What on earth would he have wanted to have said about it?
I think he would have.
Maybe it was, what is TikTok?
Yeah.
What is this TikTok thing?
He would have talked about it in the context of growing use in organizational communication. That's a big topic, frankly. But he has talked about it before in that vein of how it's entered the mainstream as a communication channel, and looking at it again from a business communication point of view. I suspect that's where he would have been going with it. Don't see it quite like over here in the UK, but I think it is different in that regard in the US.
What do you want to talk about? Is there anything on that list that you wanted to share? Because this is like a little mini masterclass.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that struck me, I've been thinking a bit about this, was actually riffing off of what you said, Joe, talk about abysmal leadership. And I think Shel and I have talked about this topic on FIR recently, but in the context of organizational leaders and what companies and other organizations are doing at a time of this profound public health emergency we're all living through, and the consequences of that, the lockdown and the curtailing of our personal liberties and freedoms. It's interesting, some of the differences we're seeing in different countries, but speaking from it as I sit in the UK, where I think at a time of profound danger right now, because of the behavior of certain people in government who have done anything but demonstrate their abilities as trusted leaders, and have done the opposite to that. And that then manifests itself in ways of changing minds, about turns, not being clear at all. Look at the latest thing that's happening in the UK. If you fly here, as of yesterday, you're in 14-day quarantine. And that's killed the tourism industry straight away. I get the balancing act. Everyone is making tough decisions. If we don't do this, are we going to have a spike in the winter? If we do this, are people safe? So what's the right choices? I don't know. You trust these guys to do this. We had a situation with Boris Johnson, his advisor, headlines for well over a week on this guy had done a journey 200 miles north of London at a time when no one was allowed to do that at all. So it's like, one rule for him and one rule for everyone else. That caused, I think, a reduction, huge reduction in trust of the leaders, which is manifesting itself now, where they're saying, oh, listen, look, we're going to relax some of the lockdown measures, but you've got to follow the rules. Don't gather in crowds more than X. Don't go to the beaches, everyone. So what's everyone done? That's exactly what they've been doing. So they don't trust these people. And they're basically saying, to hell with what you say. Why should I trust you? Look at what you did. And that is reverberating. So this will be a case study at some point, I'm sure, how not to be a leader and how to make people distrust you even more than small groups that people did before. It's now universal. I did read a report today that popularity of Johnson is 41%, which coincidentally from the same survey is what Donald Trump's popularity level is in the US. So what does all that mean? I don't know. It just feel, look, this is a waste of time with these people, but that's who we've got, for better or worse.
Well, there's so that last, I'm going to come back to that last statement that you made, and because it was a little sting in the tail, which I'll come back to. But I think 2 points. One is, I think that this will be the most fascinating, unfortunately, fatally fascinating case studies of leadership when we look back in history, when we think about things like decisiveness, vulnerability, transparency, humility, things like being able to apologize and say we did the best we could on the information we had, as opposed to distracting or transferring the blame. And I'll try not to make this political. It's hard not to, but leadership, or the lack thereof. The thing that struck me is this truly, I was just saying it to someone the other day, which is my fear for this country, for the United States, is that if this global pandemic couldn't bring us together, nothing could. And then, of course, what happened is as close. And then the person said to me, but actually, we kind of did come together. We did kind of start to work together. And then after George Floyd, it's almost like we've been ripped apart again, or at least the ripping has started again. And I think the point I wanted to make is, truly, this is a global phenomenon. Let's just talk about the pandemic for a second. What we've witnessed in the US is the difficulty, the friction, the inability for states to coordinate and with each other and then with the federal government. But surely what was needed and what is needed is for countries to coordinate. And yes, this does, I mean, it's a whole can of worms when we think about organizations like the United Nations, like the World Health Organization. There are bodies that are meant to bring together. But leaders, G7, the leaders coming together saying one plan, one set of rules, one focus, one goal, one nation, one planet, one pandemic. It's the inability for us to think singularly and the power of one. And I think that's why we're all running around in different directions because listen, I live in Connecticut. We've been good. We were the last state to open up. We did everything that we were told, and we still do everything we're told. But a state next door might not be doing that, and they might just come and decide to come and hang out in our state. And so it's been the inability, I think, Neville, for leaders not just to lead, but actually to coordinate at that highest level. In a corporation, they would call it a management team.
Yeah, I think that there are major conflicts. If you look at, I mean, the US is interesting, I find, because the states individually are in a sense similar in a sense to the European Union and its individual countries that make up that union, the political union. They're not the same country. There's a huge difference there. But if you look at how individual countries have behaved, and you can see the parallels in the US to a certain extent, where the overriding factor in them deciding what they would do has been national interest and political interest after that of that political leader in that particular country. You've seen situations like in Europe where the Schengen Treaty countries, 27 countries who all signed a treaty to abolish borders between each of those countries for the free movement of people, one of the fundamental foundations of the European Union. And how that fell apart in the early days of the pandemic, early days meaning back in February, March time before the lockdowns. And each country was doing their own thing. And then you saw situations arising in Eastern Europe in particular that it probably highlights some long-standing, deep cultural difficulties in those countries and how they treated migrants, how they put up borders straight away, and how they met people with brute force to prevent things happening or to stimulate other things to happen. Didn't happen the further west you went, typically. Up in Scandinavia, each of those countries behave differently and they've had different outcomes. Then you go wider than that to Asia and Africa. I've read today a report that Africa's not even hit anything like a peak yet. So that's still to come. But in Europe and in the US, each of the states is doing their own thing to a large extent, and that isn't helpful. How to not have that? Well, the sign surely is in China, which is not acceptable in Western democracies, which is the government shuts you down, and you are with trackers. You are quarantined at home, and if your mobile device doesn't send the signal that senses your presence there, they send the cops around with guns. So that has been happening there, and they are used to that kind of behavior. Imagine trying to do that in a Western country. It would be very messy, violent, really awful. But is that what we might have to do if there is a severe second wave of this that kills all those hundreds of thousands of people you alluded to at the beginning, Joe? Don't know, but it's not a stable looking picture, and a demonstrative ability or inability of leaders to actually lead well, then you've got that is kind of sets the scene for what looks not a pretty sight coming, it seems to me. Sorry to be a bit of a scaremonger here, but I worry really about this.
I think it's very realistic what you just said. And I think that, there are those who say, I can't quote anybody right this second, but I have heard people that I respect who think there could be 1 million more deaths. And from incompetency. So anyway.
Yeah,
I think that the one thing that most of us here come from the media background, and if you look at what is taking place at a global perspective, and specifically with the United States, at least to isolate it, is that if you do have good leadership and you have good marketing, naming, messaging, sequential messaging, understanding, then people can understand what they're supposed to do. And if you politicize masks, as an example, or if you politicize shelter in place, as an example, another one, then you start to have our tribal nation politicizing health. And then obviously then you have the WHO that came out again today and said, yeah, well, we made a mistake 3 days ago saying that asymptomatic issues aren't. And so you're like, oh, and so, it feeds the machine. It feeds the Trump machine. I don't know exactly. I haven't followed Boris Johnson that much as it relates to his messaging and naming with how he's trying to communicate to his citizens. But that's our biggest problem here in the leadership front, is that the people that want to hear what they want to hear from Mr. Trump will say, yeah, the mask, it's a hoax, it's this and that.
Yeah.
As I've shared with other people on this feed earlier, I grew up in rural Minnesota and rural Northern California. Now I live in San Francisco, which is obviously very liberal. And my friends, on my feed will talk about this being a hoax and that it doesn't work and this and that. And they 60% of our country has never left the United States. They don't have passports. So, my joke to my friends is, hey guys, zoom out. This isn't a conspiracy about an election for Donald Trump. There's 188 countries in the world that are affected by this pandemic.
But I think Joey, we now have to zoom out, and we have to think about, two points. One is listening to Tim Ferriss's interview with Madeleine Albright, and question was asked he asked her, what is the definition of the word politics? And she said, it is the language with which you talk to government officials. That's what politicking was, a specific language and tonality and vernacular in terms of how you addressed government and how government was done and how they interacted with one another. And now the politicization of everything, the weaponization, it's something different. But also when we go back to original meanings, and why do I say this? Because I'm about to say a comment about our president, but how can it, but immediately if people are watching this and they're your friends, on your feed, they switch off, they discount, they trash, they completely are closed. And the opposite, right? If I was saying what they agreed with, they'd be all in. So what I'm about to say? I'm about to say, when the president said, I'm going to address the nation from the Oval Office in prime time, everybody listened. Everybody watched. And whatever he had to say was important and profound and made a difference, right? And that is about as old school as possible. Now, with flipping, what do you call these red alerts, or what do you call the thing that you get on your phone now? There's a
Amber alert.
No, it's not an Amber alert, but no, but it's like an emergency.
Yeah, for the curfews, those things.
Well, but no, not just the curfews. I'm saying, like, we have so many ways to communicate now. It's the irony is we have so many ways to communicate with people, and people, like, I can tell you, I am lost. I was nervous today. I was pathetic giving blood today because I was like, is this okay? Is this secure? Am I okay? Am I going to be okay? I don't know what to think. I don't know.
You're not alone, Joe. You're not alone with that.
Terrible.
No, it's the same. I see it the same here in the UK. I experience it a little bit myself now and again, not that often, to be truthful. But I know when I listen to others I know saying similar things, how worried they are about going out even. So we've got a thing here in the UK where all the schools or a sequence of age groups are being opened up to go back to school again. and over 1 million parents are refusing to send their kids to school because they don't think
Good.
it's safe. So at the end of the day, it's down to your own decision. And the government done the right thing. And what other alternative they had? They said, "You're absolutely right. We got it wrong with this." And that was actually quite genuinely humble statement from the government spokesperson. So is that a sign of something shifting? I doubt it, frankly.
And
But
by the way,
they had no choice. Yeah.
no, I was going to say, and by the way, when WHO does that and they say, actually, we're reversing or retracting, or we might have been wrong about that, that's not seen as a sign of strength.
No.
It's
No.
seen as a sign of weakness, and it is politicized and weaponized again, as in
You got it.
Yep.
That's
guys
exactly.
are complete.
This is 101 we're seeing in action here. You're absolutely right. And that could have been different, I would argue, if they had engendered strong feelings of trust in the voters or in the population. And instead, they do not have that at all. So, you know, even this is different to the US in so many ways in this regard, but even those who you perceive as being ultra strong supporters of this particular political party, whether it's left or right, doesn't really matter, that is evaporated. So you're now looking at almost a rudderless state of a ship of state, if you will, because you just ignore what the leaders say because you don't believe them or you don't care anymore. That's the worst case.
You know, I just had a little as my regulars would know, which is basically Bob, Joey, Steve now has replaced Jan. Jan is dead to me. I'm just saying. Like
Remember, this is being recorded.
Yeah, like you, Jan, you're dead to me. I take this very personally. No, but so what I was going to say is, as you guys know, like all my like intelligence now comes from podcasts that I listen to while I'm running. Otherwise, like I got nothing. But I was listening to the Pivot with Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway, and talking about Facebook's position, right, with cozying up to Trump. And I mean, Galloway is just such a character, right? Like when he says,
awesome.
So Kara's point of view, and she wrote an article, an op-ed that says Zuckerberg is the world's highest paid customer service executive, right? And he said, no, I think he's just the world's cheapest whore. You know, like the way he says it, like, so his point of view is, she would argue this is about First Amendment. He says this is not about First Amendment, it's about Second Gulf Stream. That was his soundbite.
Wow.
Like while I'm running, I'm just like laughing. I'm like, that is just so perfect. But here's the point I wanted to make. You know, what we need now really more than ever is we need, remember Hannity and Combs? Like, I'm not saying that was the best execution of it. We need like two people that have different points of view having the same conversation at the same time. That's what we actually need. We need two perspectives that then respects the audience to make up their minds. Because, I mean, I'm just building on what you said, Neville, about trust. Everybody has an agenda. Everybody is biased. Everybody is subjective. And anybody that says I'm objective, they're lying. So like my approach now is to say, listen, you know how I feel about Trump. It should be obvious if you just follow my Facebook feed. But I'm still going to attempt to be as objective as I can, or give you a point of view that isn't blindly biased. And you can discount it by, maybe you'll discount it by 80% instead of 100%. But I mean, we need a smarter way to talk.
Yeah,
well, I think part of the problem is that a lot of the experts are not communicating effectively, right? Which is an appropriate topic for this group. But you know, if you listen, like you take the WHO example. In that case, my understanding from a discussion that I saw this morning amongst a couple of doctors was that it wasn't so much that the WHO was changing their position, but that they used two terms in ways that we as lay people might not. So asymptomatic, they say, refers to someone who never gets symptoms. And really, when most of us say asymptomatic, we mean pre-symptomatic. And so, you know, words matter, and you have to understand the audience you're speaking to. And I think in a lot of cases, whether it's doctors or politicians, they're not communicating clearly about any of this. And that makes it even worse than it already was.
It's almost like they're using jargon, like people often do, to give them the sense of control over something that they know that other people don't. I don't know anyone who knows what asymptomatic actually means, frankly. What's a better way of saying it, do you think? What's a way to use that in a way that most people could actually understand it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not one word, unfortunately.
yeah. That is the problem. And again, that's about words.
Yeah.
We have a lot of words out there that really no one understands. And I think that's a bigger problem because everyone does have an emotional bias. Yeah. And I think and that's where leadership matters. We've talked about this as a culture for many years. There's been campaigns about it for many years. You know, who do you want answering the phone at 3 a.m.? That's one of the most famous campaigns in political history of the United States. And the same thing is going to stand true now. Who do you want in charge, right? Do you want Mr. Biden in charge? Do you want Mr. Trump in charge? And that's you're going to see the same thing. It's 41%, has remained 41% for Mr. Trump since the beginning of time. It'll always be there. That's not going to move. The fact that Boris is at 41% just kind of shows you that it's not just tribalism in the United States. It's people who have their own view of things.
Agree.
Agree. But either way, if we could communicate which most of us know from our background, it's very important. Every single word is important. And the fact that we don't hold words with any reverence as a political body is a big problem. If you look at defund the police, right here, this is the new thing that's going on in the United States right now. That's a huge meaning behind it, which is usually reform. It's not get rid of every single peace officer, but the idea behind it is that if you call 911 today, peace officer comes to your house because you have domestic violence, that's one thing. But if you have mental illness, if you have this is happening, if you have heart attack, these are all different pieces and parts to our emergency system. And the way that, again, our liberal politics is happening is defund the police. They paint it on the streets, they go hashtags, they go viral. And if you don't defund the police, then you're a bad guy. Like this wonderful mayor in Minneapolis was booed out of his own rally because he said he wasn't going to defund the police. And this is a really good man who has the best interest of Black Lives Matter and his constituencies in St. Paul. And that went crazy. And that's an example of words. They just don't work anymore because you don't.
Yeah, I don't think you could find a mayor that would have been more in favor and supportive. And it was insane
and
that
genuine. He's very genuinely sad about this situation. And, again, they attacked him. So that's where we are. Liberals attack each other as much as they attack other people.
You should get your brother working on this, Joey. Right? Who's helping you with the book?
Yeah. Well, again, that's the words. It's the whole book, right? So the idea behind it is we just don't get it as a society. We don't get words.
Well, I think if I could make one more point, and we'll probably go to about 3:30, so I'll give everybody a chance to have we'll call it the final word, Steve Garfield. Everyone gets a chance to have a final word before we close it down, as we put more structure, on this. But I'll do mine later. Anyone want to say like one more, what's on their mind or a kind of a final word?
I've said too much already.
Really? No.
This has been good fun. Good conversation, I think.
Yeah, thanks, Neville, for your time today.
Yeah, great being part of this show. I mean, but it was really, really fabulous to see Joe again after a long time.
Totally,
and to catch up with a few things. There's loads more we've got to catch up with, Joe. So we should do this again at some point, I think.
Let's.
Yeah. Maybe we do it in Second Life, so.
If you want me, no pressure, but if you want me to come on the show or do something, I would love to.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be just so awesome to chat with you. But
I think we should organize that, definitely.
It would be such fun. No, I was just saying that when you look at, to pick up what Joey was saying about defund the police and this, and tribalism, it's very concerning because we continue obviously to be torn apart. And I just wonder, I guess my final point is, we've seen certain personalities, and I'll give you a good example. Anderson Cooper, when he, this is in my mind, I could be wrong, but it was Anderson Cooper who, at the time of, I think it was Katrina, he was in the trenches. He was in, New Orleans, and he was just, and he made a name for himself. That's when he emerged. That's when he separated. That's when he took on everyone and he called the BS and he called, the bullshit, etc. And we need, who's going to be that person to step up now? Who's going to be that person to step up and emerge and say no more, and I'm going to call it out, because we need a voice. We don't have leaders. That's quite clear on both sides, I might add. But we need a voice. Who is going to be that voice? Who's going to stand up and fill that void? Sadly, I just don't see anyone doing it.
No one springs to mind, certainly in the UK, but no one I can think of in the US even. Because what you're saying is we need a voice.
Hold on. Someone's emerging.
Ernie, okay. Hey, Ernie.
I think Dan Rather's been doing a good job on his Facebook page, been telling the truth. There's a few.
Bill Moyers. I'm a big fan of Bill Moyers. If you get a chance, visit his website for some amazing.
He's fabulous too. He doesn't have enough reach.
Yeah,
that's the problem with Bill Moyers.
Look, I mean, the thing is, there's not going to be a singular voice, and I think that searching for a singular voice is misguided. And this is not new. We like to talk about a lot of these divisions as new, but they're really not. If you look back to the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, the 60s, I mean, there were large factions, and people listen to their own voices. I think there's more of a focus on it now because there's so much more media out there.
Right.
And
there's so many voices, so many.
Scenes.
Right. So many voices.
It's always been there.
Yeah, you're right.
Didn't necessarily see it.
Yeah.
Well, guys, to just hold that thought, Stephen, Bob, to Bill, Dan, please just tell them they can come on my show if they want to expand their reach, and I will engage with them and promote them. I'll do that. It's my pledge. It's my pledge.
All right, cool. I'll reach out.
Thank you, Joe.
No, thank you. Did anyone else want to say anything before I close it down?
I did have one other thing to say is, I have to fact check these things I see. It's sad because some of my friends on Facebook are not close friends, and so they post things like they're facts. And just the other day I said, oh, I shared this and I copied what you said, and I just realized you just made it for your friends only, but I kind of just made it public. Are you okay with that? And she said, oh, I didn't say that. I just copied it from somewhere. So I thought it was her thought. So I had to go Google to find out the real source. And then I shared it. And then this morning, one of my, not really a friend, but someone I follow said that, why aren't people mad that 20 cops have been killed during these riots? And why isn't everybody all upset about this? So I went and Googled that, and Snopes came up right away and said that's not true. So then I had the decision, do I go on her page and put the Snopes thing and tell her she's not saying a fact? Yes. And I've gotten in trouble recently for doing that. So I just unfriended her and went away. And I took the Snopes thing and said, fact check, 20 cops have not been murdered in the riots. So I just shared it on my page. But I'm finding that, this having to fact check a lot is getting to be a big job for me.
You've got to verify. Yeah, you've got to verify.
Which is exactly why Twitter's move with Trump is so needed and necessary and important. And it's not just about Trump. It's about, with all this AI and all this intelligence, fact checking should theoretically should be done automatically, and there should be some kind of, there should be an algorithm that can actually say, maybe not, or at least a little question mark or an icon that says this is not verified.
Have you seen that on Facebook? I've seen it a couple times.
Yeah.
Facebook has a thing under the post that is inaccurate, and it says, here's the USA Today story that tells you the truth. Go read that. And it does do that.
Except for Trump's tweets.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think
sorry, Joe. This is a real dilemma because you can't spend time checking everything. It's impossible. So you've got to make choices, and you will not get it right all the time. But I find that I'm doing what you're doing, Steve, a lot, double checking in a sense, people I kind of know, and even those I do know quite well. because if they've shared something once that's not truthful, I don't believe they've done it deliberately. They were hoodwinked as well because they didn't check. But you do then tend to look a little more closely at what they're doing before you share something. That's a shame when that happens. But what else can you do? Because, hey, you can't do this all the time. There isn't an automated system that's trustworthy. There are plenty of sources that you can rely on. But there are some simple things that I do, certainly, is if I see something that's interesting, let me share that. I'll check it at least with 2 or 3 other places to see where else that's being talked about. And that might take me 10 minutes. So I'm not going to be doing that with everything. So you end up then prioritizing what it is you're going to share content about and checking that well. But I don't know what else you can do without tools to help you. There are some websites that help you. But at the end of the day, it's your own judgment, I think, and hence keeping your eyes and ears open, you get a sense of what feels right.
Right.
I have to say, though, I've made some mistakes in recent weeks where I shared something that turned out not to be true at all, even though I thought, yeah, that sounds very plausible. Hey, this guy's talking about it as well. So I shared it wrong. So you're not going to get it right every time.
So did you take the post down, or did you leave it with? So what did you end up doing?
It was just shared. No, I didn't take it down because many people commented that it wasn't true.
Right.
I don't like taking stuff down, although if something's egregiously horrific, then I will take it down. But I'd rather actually comment on it, saying, "Look, this was not right, and I shared it by mistake. Sorry about that."
I mean, with it, like an update or something after the post.
Depends what it is, to be honest.
I just want to say one more thing, which is, I mean, clearly we're going to be here until 6 o'clock tonight, but that's obvious.
It's well after that for Neville.
Well, yeah, I mean, I got to drop in about 2 minutes because I'm at my limit of Zoom time for today.
Yeah, he has. It's like a restraint.
It's a hard thing I forced upon myself for non-work related stuff, and this is definitely not. This is very personal stuff. I have to do a limit, otherwise it drives me nuts because I'm on Zoom all day. And my kind of capacity to, for brain to function properly is reaching its limit. Plus, I need a drink now. It's 20 to 9.
All right. Well, that's actually a hell of a compliment to say that this is, you regard this as personal versus work, which I appreciate it.
Yeah,
right back at
you. Drinking. More
I'm going to have gin and tonic. Actually, that'll do me good.
I'm going to have one tonight in your honor too. But I was just going to say, like, what Steve was struggling with is what I on my Sunday show spoke about too, which is, what do you do now when someone on Facebook posts something? Do you comment publicly because they posted publicly? Do you just unfriend them? Are you being a coward by just unfriending them? I'll just tell you, I went through both where this person said, I did not kill George Floyd. And I didn't recognize them because I have 5,000, like I don't know everyone, like obviously. And then right beneath that, I was like, okay, it could be interesting. What's his angle here? But right below that was WWLM, right? White Lives Matter. I'm like, no, sorry. And I wanted to, and I started writing this whole thing, and I'm like, it's not worth it. And all I did was I deleted it, I unfriended them, and I moved on. Now, on the weekend, this friend of mine had reposted something that actually spoke about how George Floyd was essentially a bad person and a criminal, and shouldn't be made a martyr. And I just and I again started writing I did write a whole comment, respectful, because she's a friend of mine. And I was like, I think you shared this way too easily without actually like understanding more about it. And then a friend of mine texted me and said, I appreciate what you're saying, but how dare you shame someone else, and got angry with me. So I was like, you know what? Deleted that. And then I posted it to her privately. And we've had a long dialogue. She actually said to me, thank you for not unfriending me. She actually said that, thank you for not unfriending me and for having this conversation with me. I just wanted to share that with you. Go get your gin and tonic.
Yeah, I got to leave now, guys. So thank you very much. Great chatting with you all.
This was great. Thank you.
Yeah, it was good, and look forward to more at some point.
Yeah, it was awesome. So nice catching up.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Bye, Neville.
See you. Bye for now.
Bye, guys. Well, I'll